Hello. Welcome back, baddies, to Baddies Mean Business. I'm your host, Riley Jennings. And today is going to be kind of a different episode. So it's the day after Valentine's Day. I thought it would be an amazingly fun time to kind of do an anti-opposite episode of what Valentine's is like. Not in a bitter way, but just more in like a funny way. So if you read the title, you know today's main theme is going to be talking about ego. And I'm going to be breaking down ego because I had a situation in my life recently where ego was present. And so I felt passionate enough to talk about it on the podcast. So this is going to be kind of an anti-episode, kind of opposite of what we typically talk about, but in the same theme, same thought process, same thread. But if this is your first time listening to Baddies Mean Business, welcome. Typically we talk to women. We receive a waterfall of wisdom from women for women. We are here for the girlies. And today I'm going to be touching on my advice or my thoughts on what ego is all about, how ego shows up in different people, the ugly side of ego. It's going to turn probably into a little rant because I was peeved at this certain scenario, but I'm not going to share the deep details of it, but I'm going to skirt around it, So you can wait for that later in the episode. Typically in the beginning of the episodes too, I'll give you a little update first on just like my life, but then I dive into the baddie briefing. But today I'm going to do like an anti-baddie briefing where I'm going to share the things that are actually kind of making me a little upset and mad lately. So welcome to your post-Valentine's Day production of ego and what's pissing me off. Anyways, so for those who are listening, sorry, this is going to be a little bit different than typical, but feel free to listen to the most recent episodes to kind of give a flavor, the sense of what Baddies Mean Business is about. But today is going to be a little spicy. So first things first, updates. What's been going on in my life? I'm working. This year, I was not planning on it being a travel year. It's turning into a complete travel year, and my bank account is like suing me. It's just completely pissed off at my financial decisions. And you know what? I'm not listening to her. I don't care. Memory is the currency I live on. Okay. So I'm going to be taking a quick trip to New York next weekend for Mackenzie's birthday. Mackenzie is my bestie friend who lives in Kansas City, and she's turning 24. And so we're going to be going to New York, and it's her very first time going to New York. And I have been one time before, and I just want to show her all of the things that I enjoyed about New York. So if you have any recommendations, so far I've received East Village is a fun time. Like any recommendations, feel free to send them to me, and I'm totally open to new ideas. But I have a little special thing planned for her. This is going to air before then, so I'm not going to like talk about what is going to happen, but just a really cute day doing the most iconic things in New York is going to be so much fun. Other than that, everything is good and dandy. Still living in San Diego. We just had a Valentines last night with a bunch of girls. And the one thing is like, for those who have their Valentine amazing, wonderful, honestly, I do love. I just like made a post with a caption like loving people, love people, kind of the opposite of hurt people. I love when I see people who are healthily in love, and I am a big fan of healthy behavior and communication. Like I just want to see the girls win. I've been a veteran advisory board member of so many different girls' relationships that I just feel I just want that to be my title. I would add it to my LinkedIn at this point if I could. I would add that to my LinkedIn as an advisory board seat to women's relationships. But I'm not licensed for that. So I'm not going to do that. But it's something I think about quite often. So Valentine's was amazing. We ate amazing food. I'm pretty sure we ate better than probably most other Valentine's dates that the girls have gone on. So when you get the girls together, magic happens. But I'm going to kind of dive into the anti-baddie briefing. I kind of got this idea. This is kind of sprung from, it's called Therapists. It's a podcast starring Octopussy on Instagram, on TikTok. He's a TikTok star, and he is with all the celebrities. He is everybody's friend. And he has a segment on his podcast called What is Pissing You Off? And I was watching the episode with Renee Rapp and her talking about all the things that's pissing her off. And so I kind of got this idea for this specific episode. What is pissing me off this week, this month? Okay. So instead of the baddie briefing meeting, talking about our favorites, we're going to dive into this. So I have 5 things that are pissing me off, and then we're going to get into the episode. And I would love to hear what's pissing you off this week too. Okay. First things first. The first thing that is pissing me off this week. So I just got a new phone. I love my new phone. It's the iPhone 15, I think, Pro. I'm very grateful for the new phone. It's beautiful. It's amazing. But you know what's pissing me off about it? Apple changed the charging port. Again. Okay? They changed the charging port to the MacBook Pro charging port. So the ones that I have in my car, everything, it's no longer valid. They go for my AirPod for now, because they changed the charging port so frequently. I hope you're making your money, Apple. I hope you're making your bag. I hope it's all worth it, because me having to switch these things out is getting really annoying. So I literally have it right here too. You can see it's a different port now. And I do have a MacBook Pro as a laptop. So yes, I already have the charger, but it's just annoying, you know? It's just annoying having to change those things so frequently. Like, why are you making everybody's lives so much harder? I thought you were already making enough money. Aren't you making enough money? Ugh. Anyways, if there is actual technical reasons for this, it charges faster. You know, I bet it does, and it has so far. I get it totally, but it's just like I am a person of change. I do appreciate change. But gosh, like I'm tired of buying new things for this. You know, every time I get a new something, okay? iPhone 5 or 15, Apple in general is kind of pissing me off a little bit this week. Okay? All right, next thing. So, at the time of this recording, it is about 4 days out from the Super Bowl, which apparently was the most streamed broadcast in history. Sorry, let me back up. It's the most streamed broadcast since the moon landing. I read that and I just couldn't believe what I was reading. I was like, the Super Bowl 2024 was the equivalent to the moon landing in 1969. Like how and so it's all everybody's theory, of course, is the Taylor Swift effect. The Swift effect. Taylor Swift being there, the girls are now involved, and honestly, I feel like it's a beautiful thing. With the whole idea of like now women are getting involved because of Taylor Swift's involvement with the NFL. If you get angry about her showing up, she literally shows up maybe like a second or two. Like if that's really bothering you, just give it a second. Like, don't you love the idea that your daughters or your wife actually might be interested in watching a game now, or wearing a jersey for you, and just like taking part in an activity that you enjoy because of Taylor Swift? That's the trade-off right there. You're either watching the game alone or you're watching it with your family, and your family is accepting it and allowing you to. That's how I see it. And so that whole thing was amazing to hear. And if I didn't become a Swiftie until later on in my life, and so I'm a true advocate of the things that she stands for, and she's just a boss girl. Like, she's a boss girl. And I know everybody's talking about her, so I'm gonna just like pause right there. She deserves some privacy too. But the thing that is pissing me off, and actually pissing me off, was apparently I read that the 49ers, or representatives of the 49ers, I won't name the specifics, we don't need to bash people personally, said that they didn't understand the rules of the overtime in a Super Bowl sense, because it's a bit different. And I'm not a football guru. Guru? I haven't eaten lunch yet. I'm not a football guru, but yes, the Super Bowl rules for overtime was a bit different than a typical season game. And they said that they didn't understand the rules. And I was just like, I was watching videos about it. I'm like, there's just no way. I feel like you should be taught in like media training to never be brave enough to say something like that. Because you should not say that. You should not be going into one of the biggest game of in the world, in the year, whatever, not the world. I know soccer has their things too. But the biggest game you can possibly have in your NFL career, and say that you just did not come prepared to understand all the possibilities of what may happen. I just feel like there's just no excuse for that. I feel like it's a bit embarrassing to say that, especially at a loss. Like, you're just looking like you're petty at that point. You just look like you're a little petty. We lost. Because would you be saying that if you had won? If you had won the Super Bowl in overtime and you happen to not understand the rules and you just did it by accident, there's no way in heck I feel like you should ever say, oh, I didn't even understand the rules, because then it looks cocky. So in summary, that's a statement that just should never be said. It should never be said. And so that is also pissing me off. That's wild. Okay, the next one is so controversial. I know I'm going to get heat for this a little bit, just a little bit. But I don't agree with tipping at like a fast food restaurant or coffee shops where I'm ordering and then I have to pick it up. That's it. That's like the only act of service that I'm receiving in between, because I think it's different than when you're in a restaurant where you're being served, they're pouring you water. Like, there is a lot that goes into serving at a restaurant where I'm sitting and you're doing a full act of service for me. I don't agree with tipping at a fast food restaurant or a drive-through for a coffee shop. I'm sorry. And I know that that's an important piece of income for those individuals. It's just that there's just not an extra bonus level of service to me that I see that would allow me to feel justified to tip. That was a very political way of saying, like, what am I tipping extra for? I feel like if you're paying for that and the company is paying for that, specifically I'm talking about Starbucks. Like, if you're at a Starbucks, like, I know you're getting paid your wage that you were promised for the service, and you are performing the service that you're being paid for through that company. So tipping extra for service that isn't additional to what is already in your job title, I feel like is a little different than when in a restaurant. So I don't know if I explained that properly. I hope some other people might understand where I'm coming from with that. It's just that tipping is becoming a really interesting concept to me, and I think about it a lot, and it's really important to so many people's livelihoods. So I've been thinking about the comparison of how tipping culture is here versus in other countries. In other countries, tipping could be seen as offensive. It could be seen as a statement of wealth, of how you feel other people's income is looking like. It's just, how did tipping culture get to this point in the United States where it's almost required to make a living these days? And it's just like this really filthy cycle of like laying it on the people to make other people's livelihood that the government or the other companies are not able to compensate for, depending on what the job is. Okay. Whoa, that one I did not expect to talk so much about. But hey, okay, I'm a little passionate about that. You can disagree with me. Totally fine. You can change my mind. Please do. I'm open to all thoughts. Okay. The next thing that pisses me off is scheduling across time zones. I can't tell you. This one I probably could do a whole episode on. I know it pisses me off to have to count up the different time zones and search it up and I'm sending you times in the Pacific Standard, but you're actually in Eastern Standard. I'm like, oh, okay, well, let me just add 3 hours and here you go. Like, here's a new set of times to choose from. Or if they're in Europe, don't even get me started. I used to have to schedule meetings a lot when they were abroad, and I know a lot of people do too. And for those who know what it's like to schedule with individuals abroad, with the time zones being damn near 15-hour difference, it is insanely difficult. Somebody's got to give. Especially when you're scheduling work for someone else and getting many people involved and trying to find a singular time. Like, Calendly can only take you so far, and Doodle Poll can only take you so far. And so that pisses me off, that it takes so much time to figure out a way to communicate with other people. And it's just like, I just don't want to do it. I just don't want to do it anymore. Like, if I know Calendly is working on it and other companies that do scheduling links are working on it, it's just that I don't know how to get around that. I really don't. Okay. here's the grand finale for the things that are pissing me off. Okay? The final thing that pisses me off is people with an ego. People with an ego. And that is a purposeful transition into the main topic of today's episode. My goal is not to make the undertone of this entire episode so negative. It's really trying to be more introspective on something. And so let me give you a little context of what made me so passionate about talking about this today. I feel like just in my 23 years of life, I've experienced quite a large amount of ego. I think no different than any other people. Just me thinking back on my own experiences. I know for a fact everybody has experienced their fair share of ego, and that's why I feel like this was an important episode to publish. But there was a scenario specifically, and I'm going to do my best to highlight the main key points of it. So I love my job. I love my job, and all the jobs I had before it, and throughout my numerous jobs, a lot of my roles have involved working with speakers. And I work with a lot of speakers throughout the years because a lot of my jobs have been around events where you got to curate speakers and have them sign on. So there were scenarios in the past where I had to curate speakers with very successful people, like deservingly successful people who deserve to get paid, who deserve to get everything and more, who just, they are very qualified individuals. And what I've noticed across the years is that for me, I'm a nobody. I am nobody. I know I'm a nobody. I know I don't make nearly as much money as a good majority of other people I sometimes talk to. That is good with me. Trust me, I acknowledge that. But I still don't think, regardless of the amount of money or success you make and the amount of credibility and rapport, that it deserves your rights to a nasty ego. And that's what I'm talking about today is like, was there a point of justification that allows people to be mean to other people or blast other people or just, step in and stomp on other people's aspirations and missions? No. I honestly don't think there is a point where that's justifiable. And let me explain why. There was a very specific scenario as of recently where there was a speaker that we were working with at one of my numerous jobs because I work with different organizations all across. And it was a scenario where we were very upfront and transparent. We were very transparent from the start, like with the things that we were able to provide, like the scenario of what is planned now, our understanding that every person has a right to say yes or no. And what ended up happening is this specific potential speaker went to social media and started talking about this scenario on social media. And there was a large response to her because, of course, she is a very credible person, has a huge following. This is a point where it could go either way because there is a bunch of, for me, I work in the nonprofit space. For those who know how nonprofits work, there's a limited amount of cash that we can work with, and every dollar counts. So sometimes there is periods where we aren't able to offer what the speaker would require to say yes to an engagement. And that's fine. That's totally fine because everybody has a right to say no, but I feel like the goal in all of this is being as transparent as possible up front. And I also understand that there are people who get a large amount of requests to speak at things as well, or get involved for things for cheap or no money and for whatever. And it can get probably really annoying after a while. I get that. But what sucks about it is that there are some people who at one point in time had like nothing into their name, were willing to help out everybody, who were willing to do whatever it took to reach success. And they then get to a point where they found their success and forgot completely about all the other people who were involved in helping them get there and aren't willing to give back in some ways. And that, not saying that there isn't their own personal reason to do it. It's just that forgetting about the people who got you to a place is really a sucky way to live, I think, in life. I think it's regardless of how successful or how much money you have, I think it's important to treat everybody and anybody as if it was your most prized possession, because if you think about it, there was a time in your life you probably would have just been down to do anything just to have that one chance, that one person. And I think it's an honor. It's an honor to have so many people dying, reaching out to hear what you have to say. Like, some people like are probably so sick and tired of what they have to say just gets blown over, not taken seriously, and they're just waiting for their break. And for the people who've gotten there and have their chance to have their, like, they are being actively sought after to share their thoughts and opinions and it being respected by an audience. That's where it's just like, how did you get to a point of forgetting where you started? How did you get there? And I'm honestly curious. I would love to hear this perspective on the other end too, because for me, and like I'm not a millionaire, billionaire. I am a regular whatever person who is behind an email. But so that's me coming from my perspective. I'm the other person on the other side of the email who's trying to serve impact in a way that doesn't always come with financial dividends, but knowing that it actually comes with other dividends, more valuable in the end, in the long run, I could find it. This is where the ranting comes in, by the way. If I'm making no sense right now, so sorry, guys. So sorry. But in summary, what I'm saying is just like, throughout your periods of life, I feel like it's so important to look back and remember of what you thought, because like, what about those periods of when you were completely dead broke and you get to a point where you have so much money in your bank account, or a comfortable living and you have a comfortable bank account balance, or the people in your life you are satisfied with, like, do you just completely forget about the things that kept you humble before because you no longer go through those same struggles? It makes me kind of nervous to think about, because it's like, well, as my life evolves and changes and I become more comfortable, it's just like, well, how am I going to, and is the way I treat people going to change? I hope not, because this is me actively trying to prevent that. I see plenty of successful people and rich people out there who just are what you consider success. Sometimes I also don't want to really feed into the idea that success is completely correlated to money, because to me, it's not. It's definitely not. Money helps. Don't get me wrong. Money freaking helps with anything. Money is influence. Money is an ability to take action. And that's what money really is important to me about, is like the ability to solve problems, because that's the way the world runs, is money. But I think when I look back at things that made me successful, I don't really ever remember the checks that came with them necessarily. I always remember the feeling I felt, the way the people around me felt. I'm a words of affirmations girl. I remember the things that people say to me. I don't really often forget about those if they were important enough in that time period. And I really try to reflect as much as possible, given that I have this podcast. And I am not perfect, and this is why I talk about it, is because like there is probably going to be a period where I'm going to need to get checked. And there's just a lot of people out there that need to get checked. Just to need to be like, what are you doing? Let's pause for a second. Do you feel like you still understand who you are? Are you still pursuing the things that you were planning to pursue? Did the noise get too much and it got too loud that you forgot to just sit back and listen to what you were saying to yourself in the first place? Like, what is happening? And so I would love other people's thoughts on this, because this particular scenario was very more so in the professional sense of like the people you are interacting with in your day-to-day work. This could also apply to your coworkers, like internally. My job personally is very external, but internal team member dynamics as well when it comes to ego, because there is people who are, because there is people I've heard, like me and a lot of my people I know, we all work online. And the benefit of working online is that sometimes when you have like issues with like coworkers, it doesn't have to necessarily get back to the workplace, but you can share advice in a non-biased way, in a very non-biased way, positive way. And gosh, some people just got audacity. Dude, just have audacity in in their workplace. It's just like once you reach a certain level, or you're a certain way, or want things a certain way, like particular, there's one person I met who was like, they're severely OCD about their process, and they're a very successful person. It was awesome. But every time somebody did something wrong, just like didn't do it quite right, more so like it was like it's just a really minor accident, or they're brand new and don't know it yet. They like when they just dig in on those new people and they're just like, what are you doing? Like, just being mean. Like, how, at what point, I understand a little harsh, constructive criticism being direct. I'm a big believer in being direct, but there's always a way to do it in a level that could be very understanding. Because what type of person will be yelled at or criticized and then like, oh yeah, I'll do whatever you say? Like, how often do you gain respect that way? By being incredibly overly critical or controlling or mean to people. Like, take a chill pill. Relax. We can solve this, but we need to have a discussion about it. Let's just hear each other out for a second. And just let's get to a point. And so that's where it's just like, I feel like ego is such a leader, and why there's so many different issues in like relationships or workplace dynamics. And that's why I felt like it was so important to talk about today. But I definitely am getting into a little bit of rant right now, but please drop in the comments on social media if you're listening on Spotify, Apple, give a follow, DM me something critical, do whatever you please. But in summary of everything I had said, I don't think that status, wealth, any of that should justify an ego for people. Treat people with kindness. Like, I think the main reason why there's so many issues is just like a lack of understanding. I feel like almost every conflict or issue is because of misunderstanding. And I think ego ties deeply into that. I'm like, if you can't come to a point of calming yourself to find some sense of understanding on why other people think the way they think, or why people do the way they do, you don't have to accept that completely, but there is a way to communicate what you want in doing it, and social media and blasting people on social media, I don't think is necessary. Like, blasting people on our cancel culture is like a whole thing too, where it's just like reality stars do something wrong and then they get death threats. Like, in what world is that okay? Like, they're still a human. Also, production had some pieces into that. So every villain that you see on The Bachelor and every villain you see in wherever in Love Island, because can you tell I'm a little bit of a reality girl? They have stories, and there was things that were cut from their story. And it's a very logistical process where literally there are people in the background who you never see who did specific cuts and edits to the film or whatever. And that's just a testament to like how media and TV and like social media, it's all a facade. It's all a facade of how people want to present themselves. And so being passionate about something, I understand freedom of speech is still alive. I still believe in freedom of speech, but gosh, cancel culture, I don't believe in. I'm like, why? You think so? One person makes, depending on the mistake, but I think people are allowed to make mistakes or say things that like aren't necessarily allowed. Okay, but hate speech, not a fan. Obviously, not a fan. But there are people who are getting canceled for the most minor things. The most minor things. And that makes it feel like where nobody can talk about their own individual thoughts and opinions. And then that creates conformity. Like, oh, we're just a conformist society because nobody is allowing other people to have a difference in opinion. Okay. And so I don't want to sound hypocritical over here because I know that there is another side to all of these arguments saying that, well, you're saying don't be hateful, but don't, like, there's a catch-22 to everything I just said. But I'm just saying find a balance. My favorite word is gentle balance. I feel like I say that on this podcast so frequently because I'm a Gemini. No, it's really just because I think it's important to know other people's perspectives because sometimes I can jump the gun and I can be very overly passionate. And so I've been working on it. I've been working on being an understanding person and trying to hear people out and having a positive communication style and being able to like be understanding that sometimes I'm not going to agree with somebody, but it's whatever. Like, we just still got to move on because it's like, I think you're a cool person. I think you're a cool person. We may not agree on some of these things, but whatever. As long as it doesn't impede on my freedom. Love. Anyways, thank you all for listening to this episode. It's a quick episode for now. But don't forget to listen to last week's episode about managing adult friendships with my cousin. I had a lot of friends listening to that episode who never knew I had a podcast. Guys, I've had this podcast for like 2.5 years, so this isn't new. Feel free to watch all the other ones too. But it definitely has been an evolution. I will say that. And I think it's an evolution of like being more secure with being on a microphone and putting yourself out there. To have you criticized or whatever. My goal this year was actually to get more haters because I don't like, if you get haters, people are listening. Like, I don't think I have enough haters yet. I might have made some through this episode. You see what I did there? Anyways, thank you for listening to this point. This is Baddies Mean Business. Feel free to follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, everywhere. We're everywhere. Also, there's merch. There's merchandise linked in bio. You can pick up some merch and 30% of the profits will be donated to women's centers. And so support the podcast. You support women's centers and you support other women and continue to listen if you want to hear other advice from other incredible women from all walks of life. But anyways, thank you for listening and checking out now. Bye.